All right, so in the last video, we talked about the simple percent questions where you're taking a percentage of a number. This topic is different. This is percent increase and decrease. So you're not going to see the word of in these questions. Remember, that was a key word. Instead, you're going to see more than or increased by, or you might see a discount or decreased by. Again, you're not going to see of, and there's a different formula. So we're paying attention to those tiny words so we know whether to multiply by the percentage or to use one of these three that I've got on the screen here. So the first one on the screen is when you're trying to figure out the percent for yourself and you know the starting and ending values, and you're going to subtract the two numbers, your starting and ending numbers. It actually does not matter what order you subtract them in as long as you give yourself a positive answer. All right, so it's just like the bigger minus the smaller is fine, but it does very much matter which you put in the denominator, because you must have the older or the first or the original of the two numbers in the denominator. So let's give this a try. The percent increase from 100 to 500. In the numerator, you're going to put the difference between these two numbers. That's a difference of 400. In the denominator, the older. That's the 100. All right, 400 divided by 100. I could change that to 4 and then multiply by 100 again, but I can see at a glance that is the same as a 400%. And then we are going to say 400% increase because we never use positives or negatives. So if it were a decrease, I wouldn't say negative 400%. Instead, I would say 400% decrease. So it's important to have that word afterwards. All right, let's try the next one, the percent decrease from 30 to 15. In the numerator, you're going to have the subtraction, right? The difference between those two numbers, that's a difference of 15. Don't worry about negatives, so just bigger minus smaller. In the denominator, always the first or the older or the original of the numbers, 30. I can see that's 1/2, and I have memorized 1/2 is equal to 50%. And so this is a 50%, and remember in this case it's a decrease. All right, that's when you know the two numbers and you're figuring out the percent. It's actually much more common on the SAT when you know the percentage and one of the numbers, and you have to get the other number. So if it is an increase, you are going to use 1 minus r, where r is the percent in decimal form. I always use r, not p, because sometimes you have to convert it back to p at the end. So again, pause this, please, and try it for yourself. All right, I hope you had a chance to try it because I'm going to give away the answers. What is 14% more than 60? You're going to take 60 and you're going to multiply it by 1 plus r. That would be 1 plus 0.14. Right? R would be 0.14. That percent has to be put into a decimal form. Or in other words, 60 times 1.14. And usually I'm just going to write it immediately as 1.14. And you can put that right into your calculator. You will get 68.4. Right? That is 14% more than 60. If you got 8.4, you took 14% of 60, right? You want to use the 1 plus R formula to make sure you get 68.4. Now, $12 after 6% sales tax is added. You're going to take that $12 and you're going to multiply it not times 1.6, but 1.06. If you multiply it by 1.6, you gave yourself a 60% sales tax, way too much, right? So you're going to multiply that by 1.06 and you should get $12.72. All right, and let's do our percent decrease. In this case, we're multiplying by 1 minus R. All right, so $50 after a 30% discount, that would be 50 times 1 minus 0.3. In other words, 50 times 0.7. So what we're saying here is if we discount 30%, that means we are keeping the 70%. Right? So we're taking 70% of 50, and that does work out to be $35. And let's do our last question. 175 decreased by 75%. In other words, I'm going to take 25% of it. 175 times 0.25. And you do have to round here. That's okay. 43.75. All right, let's try some multiple choice questions like what you'll see on the SAT. So here's question number 1. Please pause it, try it for yourself. All right, let's look at it together now that you've had a chance to do it on your own. This question here, it says, what's the percent increase in solar power? So we're looking here between 2005 and 2015. So from the black to the light gray here, 2005 looks like 1.25. I do have to kind of eyeball it, but that's okay because it does say approximates. So if it's not perfect, it should just be very close. And let's see, the 2015 is at 2.5. Remember, in the numerator, I subtract these two numbers, so 2.5 minus 1.25. In the denominator, always the older of the two numbers. The older is your 1.25, right? That because 2005 happened first. It's older, further back in the past than 2015. And sometimes people write 1 times 100%. I just remember to convert it to a percent at the end. But you do put this all in your calculator. And we do see that we have an increase here of 100%. And you should also memorize this. You should know in this case we did double. So double means, or is the same thing, an increase of 100%. I think that's another math fact that's very helpful, not to always have to calculate, just to know it's true because it comes up a lot. All right, let's try it again. It looks like the same question. It is not this time. It's the same. I know it's the same graph, but this time it wants to know about biofuels. And it's not a percent increase, it's a percent decrease. So please pause the video, try it for yourself. All right. Hopefully you had a chance to try this one. Let's do it together now in biofuels. I'm looking that here we went from 0.5 to 0.25. In the numerator is the difference between these two numbers. Just make sure it's always positive. In the denominator, always the older of these two numbers. So it looks like it's 0.25 over 0.5. That's equal to 1/2, which I know is 50%. So A is the answer. And this does tell you another math fact that you should memorize. When something is halved, right, from 0.5 to 0.25, it went down to exactly half of the previous amount. So halved means a decrease of 50%. So next time I see this question, if I notice it went down to exactly half, I'll just circle 50% because I have it memorized. All right, let's try some of these other questions. Here we're going to use that 1 plus r and 1 minus r formula. So please pause the video, get your own answers for 3 and 4. All right, I hope you pause the video because I'm about to give them away. For number 3, it looks so much harder than it is. Here we have an increase by 4%. That means my multiplier is 1.04. So C is the answer. There were a lot of words in this question, but there were not a lot of steps. It really was that quick. All right, let's look at number 4. This one, there's a little bit more, well, the numbers are just a little bit more difficult to work with, but we're going to do the same way. We're decreasing by 94%, right? Use that 1 minus r formula. And R is 0.0094. So be careful, that is not 94%, it's 0.94%. So I'm going to write it out because I know this is just a trickier number. I have to be careful with it. On my calculator, I'll do that, and that's going to give me 0.9906. So C is going to be the answer here. All right, we got 2 more questions. Let's give 5 and 6 a try. So pause the video. All right, hopefully you gave yourself enough time and you have your answers for 5 and 6. Let's do them together. Number 5, we have a painter charges $1,700 and he has to use 57% of that to purchase supplies. So we're going to decrease by 57%. In other words, we'll use 1 minus r, where r is 0.7. So 1,700 times 1 minus 0.57. right? And so I'm going to put that directly into my calculator. I can even use parentheses in my calculator so I don't have to do it in steps. This does give me $731, so A is the correct answer. All right, and let's try our last question of this video. And this is the challenge question. Be careful. It's not that it's that hard. It's just that students try to do it wrong, right? And I'll show you what I mean by that. Look carefully for the equation somewhere in the sentence, right? And here it is. Beluga whales produce 25% more offspring than orca whales. All right, there is your equation, and I'm going to take it word for word. Let me use B for beluga. Now, usually is the equal sign, but here they have that verb produce is taking the place of my is the verb. I'm going to use my equal sign there. 25% more, I'm going to use 1.25. That's my 1 plus R multiplier right there. And what am I multiplying that by? Orca whales. I'll use R for orca just because O is a terrible variable. It looks like a 0. So look, I've got my equation. B equals 1.25R. That's just a 3-part equation. There's not much going on, but you really do have to be careful to write it exactly the way you see it in the sentence. And also I've got this 30. It looks like that 30 is B. So we're going to say 30 equals 1.25R. And I can solve that by dividing both sides by 1.25. And my calculator tells me that that is 24. So the answer is B. Hey, if you said it's very common for students to say A22 here, and the reason they do it is they think, oh, instead of decreasing R by 25, instead of taking R and multiplying it by 1.25 or increasing it, they try to decrease the belugas by 75%. If you do that, you will get a close but not correct answer, right? So if it has 25% more, do not fall for the temptation of thinking that's the same thing as like 75% less. It is not, right? Or you can't do 25% less than belugas because you're taking 25% of the other number and it ends up being a different number. The other thing is if you do that, I believe what happens is you don't get a round answer. And there is nothing in this question that says you are allowed to round. I don't see the word approximately. I don't see the words which is the closest to. I don't see anything about rounding. So I really did expect, and I did get the exact number of 24. So pay attention. If you get an answer that's like close, but you have to round, and the question doesn't give you permission to round, you should check to make sure you didn't fall for a trap. Because sometimes that's exactly the clue you need to go back and try it one more time and find a mistake. All right, hopefully you found this helpful. I'll see you in the next video.